set your goals, achievable goals, and you do that on a regular basis, and you're gonna get to where you're going. The definition of success is the realization of a predetermined goal. So if we set out to, you and I, Dwayne, we're going to play golf next summer. If we say, you know what, you and I together, by the end of July, we're both going to shoot 75. I don't know. Let's pick a number, something that is achievable.
Yeah, make mine 95.
Okay. So if you said 95 and I said 75, let's say that, and neither one of us have ever done it before, but we're close. And we set that goal today, guaranteed you and I will actually do that before July if we set our goals achievable. So that success begets the next success.
Welcome to the Dwayne Kerrigan Podcast, and I'm your host, Dwayne Kerrigan. With 35 years in business and close to 30 ventures across 12 industries, I've seen a lot. Amid the celebrity allure of entrepreneurship, many exceptional entrepreneurs remain shadowed. Here, I team up with these hidden talents to unveil their challenges and successes. Dive in with me to unearth entrepreneurial gems, learn from our experiences, and get educated. Hey, ladies and gentlemen, I just want to introduce you to a good friend of mine, Brad May, former NHL left winger from 1991 to 2010, I think. It's Brad Mayday May. And drafted 14th overall in 1990. You're going to have to correct me if I'm wrong on any of this stuff, Brad. Played 1,061 games, I think, for 7 teams. And Buffalo, Vancouver, Phoenix, Colorado, Anaheim, Toronto, and I think you finished off in Detroit.
Detroit.
Yeah.
Yes.
And then, but you guys, you picked up a Stanley Cup win back in, I think it was 2007, I think, with Anaheim. And yes. You retired 2010, I believe. Went on to broadcasting. Now you're in the insurance industry. And yeah, so, I mean, and then actually you were back on TV again in The Amazing Race with Sam, your daughter, for season 10 of The Amazing Race, right? That was back in 2024.
Yeah, we had an unbelievable experience. My daughter and I, she turned 25 on I think it was the first day of the show or the day before when we started to air in Niagara Falls. And it was amazing. She was 25. She got to spend 1 month unencumbered, didn't have any other relationships or conversations with anybody but myself and the people directly involved with the show. So it was a month that, time, you can't buy this type of time with your child. And it was unbelievable for the two of us, but for her, 25, hanging with her old man, learning all my idiosyncrasies and habits. We're in a hotel room together. We traveled Canada and literally we didn't have a cell phone, couldn't watch TV, didn't have the internet.
Oh, wow.
So it was just the two of us. Yeah, we really built our relationship stronger than ever, and it was really cool.
Oh my God, what a gift! That would have been awesome.
Yeah, you know what? And just to make a few corrections, and not to do that, but I didn't play. It was 1,041 games, I believe. So you gave me 20 extra, which was nice. I wish I had coaches like you. We won a Stanley Cup in 2007 with the Anaheim Ducks, which was, of course, a dream come true. And I got to play it was 7 teams, yes, but 8 stops. I played in Vancouver with the Canucks twice.
Oh, you did?
So just small housekeeping items there. But the reason why I bring it up is I got traded from Buffalo to Vancouver in 1998. Was there for 2.5 seasons, and then I left to the Phoenix Coyotes. But at the trade deadline 3 years after that, in 2003, I got traded back to Vancouver. So I played with, effectively the same team, a few new players, but the core of Vancouver was the same. So going back a second time was extra special. It was really neat. They knew me, I knew them, and I was able to kind of fit right in. And we had a wonderful team. We fell short 2 years in a row to really advance deep in the playoffs. Not because of anybody's fault or the team not being built right. We just didn't execute when we needed to, but we had a really, really good team and backstopped by a pretty good goaltender in Dan Cloutier. But we had the West Coast Express, Marcus Naslund, Todd Bertuzzi and Brendan Morrison, who were one of the best lines in the NHL at the time. And our defensemen were I think, the best defense core in the National Hockey League. We had Ed Jovanovski, Matthias Oland, Marek Malik, all different nationalities, by the way. But these guys, they played so well together. Brent Sopel, Sammy Salo, all these guys. I think we had the best defensemen in the league, and unfortunately, we lost. We lost. Like, I want to say it was 2 Game 7s that we lost.
Oh, wow. Wow.
Yeah. So
disappointing.
Disappointing for us, but
it's interesting how complimentary you are to all your teammates. I mean, because you are, one of the things I was going to say on the introduction was that you are one of the nicest gentlemen that I've ever met. And maybe possibly the one that is a little bit nicer and more of a gentleman is your father. I mean, I don't know what water you two drank when you grew up, but really, I remember seeing you speak. I remember watching you. I think it was before we really knew each other, and I watched you speak to a small group, and I just thought, wow, man, how, like, this man is such a great sportsman, and he's just so humble, and it just really struck me, how much of a gentleman you were. So I'm really appreciative of you being on the podcast, bud.
Dwayne, that obviously that means a lot to me. I certainly, here's the thing. I don't think you try to be a nice person. I think you are who you are. I'm definitely cognizant of my surroundings and where I am. And I do think that I have a responsibility, representing not only my father and of course the family, but the game I played and that integrity of all the people that believed in me. If I acted like an asshole, it would actually, show badly, show up with them in my sphere of influence. So I recognize that, I'm here as an individual, but trying to be a better guy and try to enhance every situation. It's authentic for sure. It's not made up. It's just, I do think it's easier to be a nice guy or embrace in these encounters than to avoid situations. It takes more effort to avoid something. And then if you have any negativity to it, to go seek somebody out, that's energy that frankly, I'm not willing to spend. You may as well face the music, right away. And if you make a mistake, own up to it. Telling the truth. Now, of course, that gets fudged a little bit, but just being an honest person, I think, is most important.
Yeah. Well, okay. So since we're talking about this, I'm going to ask the question because obviously this is a business podcast, and we talk about a whole bunch of different elements outside of business, but it all relates to me. And in my, like, when I'm listening to you speak there, what I hear is leadership. And to me, knowing your father as well as I do, I mean, he is really like, and this is not my opinion. I don't know one person. I've never met one person that has not said, Ken May is one of the biggest gentlemen anybody's ever met. And then it's no trick that you're the same. And so I'm just curious, from a leadership perspective, like, because, leadership shows up in a lot of different ways, and your dad is well retired but he's still a leader, like in the community, how he shows up, how he talks. And obviously that's brushed off on you when he raised you. So while we're talking about family and, being a gentleman and being honest and being truthful, and like you had just mentioned, what are the pieces do you think you took away as a young lad? Like, and maybe even in the beginning, you were like, you didn't want to take it away, but it just got ingrained because you just saw it over and over, and there was just this pattern.
Well, you know what? I have a great story that probably speaks to everything that you just spoke of. My dad, he's 83 years old. He's retired, but he still dabbles a little bit in real estate. He still has his brokerage, and I guess he's still active, but not as robust. And I think in the last week or two, he had a listing, and the gentleman that was a different nationality. had my dad come and appraise the site. And anyways, he was going to actually do this deal with this gentleman. And I guess in the laws of real estate, you can't double end a deal anymore. I believe you can't be the buyer's agent and the seller's agent. And this guy thought that, you know what, why don't I ask Mr. May, can you handle both sides of this transaction? And probably to get a point shaved off or whatever it is. I assume that's what it was about. And my dad, sure, he could have done that, possibly done it. I don't know the legalities or the ethics of it, but he said, you know what, I actually represent the seller, and you're obviously representing the buyer. I actually would really like to just handle the one side. You bring in your own representation, and sure, I won't get the extra 2 or 3 points, but this is the way it's supposed to be. And I think, and just by the way the story was told to me, I think there's going to be more business that's going to come my dad's way just because of those ethics. Okay, maybe he walked away and he could have maybe fudged it a little bit and got paid an extra percent or so. But that's not right. And the gentleman that actually did this will come back and he's going to do more business with my father. I guarantee it. So I gave him a high five. I said, Dad, you didn't make it today. You made enough today, but you did the right thing. And he had a smile on his face and he said, you know what? That's all you have to do, Brad. Do the right thing and it's going to work itself out. So just using that example, and I'm sure there's plenty of those in the past that I'm not even aware of. I listened to that and he's got more integrity in his pinky finger than I'm sure a lot of businessmen or women. And I'm so proud of that. And I really want to be that guy. I want to, and of course I want to make as much money as possible. And I want to be able to, affect his change and in a positive manner. But you do it once, you're now labeled. And I don't think it's worth it. Down the line, I think that integrity will bring more business. And even if it doesn't, you still did the right thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I'm curious. I mean, when he was raising you, the question I really am dying to ask is like, how did he show up as a father to lead you? Was he a teller, a seller? Was he just went about doing his thing? And then you learned by just watching him and emulating him. And then how did that transfer over to you and then your leadership in wherever, in every area of your life, but in hockey and whatever? How did that all kind of blend together over the years for you?
I'm a real spontaneous, optimistic, pie in the sky guy. Like everything's a 20,000 square foot, or it's not square foot, 20,000 foot view. And I can see the big picture, but I kind of get lost in the details. That's just not my strength. I'm more of a macro thinker. Where my dad is, he's an accountant by trade. He's straight right to the numbers. He doesn't need to hear the story. The numbers or that spreadsheet will tell him everything he needs to know. He doesn't get enamored with, it's a sunny day and it's all the wonderful things that actually draw me in. I think we're very different. I'm more like my mother that way, where we show up and we do a lot of the talking. A lot of the pace of a conversation typically comes through us. We don't like those uncomfortable silences. Where when I'm sitting with my dad, and it's been amazing. I've been living in his house for the last year. He lost his wife, his second wife. Gail passed away about a year ago, and so my wife and I moved into the house, and we're actually building around the corner, but we're very close. And I haven't lived with my dad since I was 10 years old because my parents split up when I was 10, and of course I saw him all the time. So what kind of dad was he? He was always present, although we weren't always together. He was always a supporter. As my mom, who was an absolute champ as well. The two of them, they kept their differences outside of the relationship with their children. And so my brother and I, we didn't notice. We just kind of lived, and we were young and we were trying to have fun, and they presented us with all the opportunities that we needed. And we were desiring my dad was always around. But now that I live with him, I can see exactly. I was afraid of him as a young boy because it was all about ethics. It was all about morality. It was all about, do what you say what you do, and if you don't, I'm going to call you on it. And as a kid that's trying to, I guess, maybe skirt the rules a little bit, take the shortcuts, try to win early, whatever. You can't. You gotta do it the right way, and over the course of time, you're gonna compile those wins, and they'll add up, and every win begets the next one. So I actually learned so much from him, and so many times, like, that when I'm afraid to tell him something, that's my intuition to say, you know what, Brad, you know, this is you have to be serious right now. If you're not going to tell him why, ask yourself that question. And it always comes back to do the right thing.
I don't necessarily want to let this go just because I think it's a really good example of true leadership. And it's like when you explain that story about your dad, it's like I look at that and go, man, that's kind of the Brad that I see, is like that integrity, that level of which I think probably lent to, and I'm sure we'll talk about this, but you played what, 19, 20 years in the NHL. There's like 5% of players in the NHL play more than 1,000 games. You're one of those guys. You said something there which was like, yeah, I was afraid of my dad growing up. And I'm curious, what'd that look like? Because what it reminded me of is just the other day somebody sent me a reel with Kobe Bryant in it. And Kobe was paraphrasing this thing, but Kobe was talking about how lonely leadership can be. How, you've got to hold a standard that people may not like you for, but you've got to do it because in the end, it's the right thing to do. And so it just kind of reminded me of the story that you just shared about your dad.
Yeah, you're talking about Kobe Bryant, and I want to say it's Phil Jackson, and Pat Riley, two coaches that he had, that clearly both champions in their own right. I listened to Michael Jordan speak about Phil Jackson. I just watched the movie and the documentary actually recently, a couple of days ago, on the miracle of 1980, the U.S. Olympic hockey team, and how all the players, they feared, and they actually didn't like Herb Brooks until they actually did something that was absolutely out of character, larger than what they could ever have dreamt and believed, that they would have beat the Russians and won the gold medal. And then all of a sudden understood exactly what Herb Brooks, what his method was. It was about dividing himself from the team, and it was kind of a divide and conquer, where have those young players build a bunker mentality. In spite of me, we are going to win. And they didn't believe that Herb Brooks loved them, but it couldn't be further from the truth. Herb Brooks did everything possible and subjected himself into that criticism, into that role, to get the absolute most out of the players he selected. And they went on to do something that was maybe one of the greatest achievements in sport. Certainly in 1980, the time when they beat the Russians and then had to beat the Finns to win, Herb Brooks walked off the bench and he allowed everyone else to celebrate. And this is the one thing I don't understand, and he's not around to talk about it, but he left the bench and he went to probably ponder his own thoughts in the locker room and kind of revel in that moment by himself, where he allowed everyone else to celebrate. The players, they're 60 years old today, 65 years old today, and they had tears in their eyes when they're thinking of their late coach, Herb Brooks. And that was the leader that pushed them harder than they've ever been pushed, challenged them at every corner, every turn, about what I'm sure a lot of it, integrity, standing up and being a good teammate. They didn't realize how close and how good and how valuable Herb Brooks was until they won. And I love the movie. I love the story, but watching these men that are older than I am. My first roommate in the National Hockey League was one of the players, Mike Ramsey. He played on that team. He was a captain of the Buffalo Sabres when I made Buffalo. And so I've heard stories from Mike this is 35 years ago, but and going through that and telling his experience with the Olympics, but sitting there watching it and then seeing the tears in their eyes, talking about their late coach, spoke volumes. It's really interesting, and I do agree, for the best leaders, maybe not all, and the way you lead. I would be one that would be all encompassing. I'm more about the greater good than myself. Um, I'd be more interested to talk to somebody that's going through a tough time and give away my time to celebrate whatever that means. Where the greatest leaders, the best players that have the pressure on them and them only, and then of course they have to lead the group. I could see a guy like Kobe Bryant saying that it's lonely at the top, because you don't have people that you can share all those experiences with, because you don't want to look weak. I'm okay with looking weak. I think in my, everybody has a different style. I think myself, and certainly just this, I'm not comparing myself to Kobe Bryant or any of that, those types of athletes, but self-deprecation, making fun of myself, seeing myself as flawed as a player that I was, talking about that. I think that's a strength when you're actually trying to communicate and build a consensus. To sit there and speak from your bully pulpit doesn't work. It certainly wouldn't work for me. Some guys maybe, but not for me.
Yeah, so a couple thoughts there, because I do want to go back to your dad, just because I really was interested in that statement that you made. But then I do want to go back to this TV show you were talking about. What's it called? The 80s? The one about the hockey team in the 80s that won the...
it's the Miracle.
Miracle. That's
Miracle.
what it is.
It's in the 1980 Olympic team, Olympic hockey team in Lake Placid. Did something that was impossible. Nobody was going to beat the Russians at that time. Amateur athletes playing against, Russian Red Army, guys that played hockey 11. I don't think they had lost a game, I might be wrong on this, in like 10 years in international competition, and they destroyed teams. Then you had this young group of collegiate athletes, because the pros are playing in the National Hockey League. The best Canadians, Americans are not in the Olympics back then because pros weren't allowed to play. But in the Eastern Bloc, Czechoslovakia, in the old Soviet Union, they weren't professionals either, so they could actually represent their country. And this American team did something that was, what they say is impossible, but that's where you know that when nothing's impossible. You got to do everything right, and it takes an incredible group of people to achieve something. But nothing's impossible if you put your mind to it.
Well, and it takes, you're right, and it takes also a good leader to be able to forge that vision. And I've heard this. I have not watched the show. I don't watch a lot of TV, but somebody actually said to me the other day I should watch it because it's a great testament to leadership, and it's in the story about Herb and how he coached and the separation that he created from his players in order to keep them toeing the line and doing what needed to be done to win that game was, a big part of why they won.
Yeah, big time. And it took, I guess, in the story, and everybody's timeline's a little bit different, but these players got together 6 or 9 months prior. There was 26 or 30 of them, and they pared it down over the course of those months to literally 20 players. But they actually trained differently, and they literally their whole method was to train to beat the Russians. And a week or two before the Olympic Games in 1980, the U.S. team had an exhibition game. I want to say it's in Madison Square Gardens, against the Russians, and they lost. They got drubbed 10-3 or something like that. I can't remember the score, but they got beat pretty badly. And of course, it's impossible. You can't beat the Russians. But that mentality and that 9 months of training together, that to create a belief system, and then lean on one another and play the best game of their life. And they beat the Russians. I just think it's one of the best sports stories going.
So when you watch that as a professional athlete, do you ever, when you reflect back on your own career, where do you think that you could improve, or you might have went, oh, if I'd done this or I'd known that? Is there those things as a professional athlete? I mean, I know in business I do it all the time. That self-reflection. Is there learnings after the fact? And if so, what would some of them have been?
Well, great question, and there's many of them. But then I guess when you look back, and I say this with recognition that yeah, I could have and I should have done so many things differently, but it still was a nice career, and the successes that you had. You just watch the players train today. This is now, of course, when I started in 1991, so it's 35 years ago. Um, Connor McDavid's playing the game today. Nathan McKinnon, two of the best players in the world. They train as hockey players. They skate in the summer. They train with like Olympic lifting, very different types of training than what we did 35 years ago. We used to, I mean, in our booklet of training, we used to go to the high school football field or track, and I'd run, miles, and I'd do mile sprints. Well, that makes no sense to be a hockey player because we're anaerobic athletes. We have to have an aerobic capacity, but we're anaerobic athletes. And I would wake up in the morning and run 5 miles. And it really makes no sense. That doesn't make you'd never see the best quarterback or the best football player in the NFL put skates on to get in shape to be a football player. It makes no sense.
Right.
And why would I put running shoes on? Because it's a completely, the skating style is different than the running gait, right from the outset. So all of that, like the training methods, I wish I knew more. Although I was on the front edge or the forward edge of training when a lot of the players that played in the late 70s, 10 years in the 80s, and they're still in the league, they haven't adjusted and adapted the new training style of running 5 miles every day in the summer and showing up in shape to training camp. They were just getting through their summers, and they'd get in shape at training camp, which of course in all data, if you don't show up to training camp in shape, you'll never ever get to where you should be as a player. So that alone, the fitness element, although I thought I was pretty good, could have been better. Did I drink too much? And when I say drink too much, we drank beer. The players today, they really don't, because it's a lot of calories to beer. I could sit in a sitting and drink 12 to 15 beers and not be totally intoxicated and get up tomorrow and play hockey. Not the night before a game, but there were some moments that we did that. Immature, right? I look back at myself and you had a window of opportunity. Maybe you should have been a little bit more serious. But then I played 19 years, and maybe I had a nice blend, because if I was that serious, maybe I wouldn't have lasted as long and you would have burnt yourself out. So I don't want to second guess myself, but those are two examples that on their face, if I did it differently, I would have been a better player, I think. The other thing was I did the Battle of the Blades, which was basically like Dances with the Stars. It was after my career was over, and I learned how to figure skate, and I was paired with an Olympic figure skater, and we did this in Toronto. I say in Canada, in Toronto, and it was a show like Dances with the Stars. Learning how to figure skate with a partner, lifting this woman over my head with one hand, skating down the ice. Had I done that 20 years earlier when I was trying to be a hockey player, without a doubt, I would have been a better player. I would have been a better skater. I would have been stronger. I would have been more adept at, nobody would have knocked me off the puck. And I was pretty strong. I mean, I was a very good skater, but I would have been better had I done that type of training in the summer, as opposed to going to the football field, doing all those sprints. Even as silly as it was, we got roller skates, rollerblades in the early 90s. They came out. Yeah, it's a different way to get in shape, rollerblading on the road. But why wouldn't I just go rent ice and become a better hockey player, become a better stick handler, learn how to score goals, by the metrics of data, the data sets they have today with all the stats and all the analytics. There are certain things that you should do in certain situations where we kind of just did it by the, flew by the edge of our seat in some ways. And coaching, not knocking our coaching, but it wasn't as evolved, wasn't as deep. It was more for the group, not individual skills. So I could look back on my career and say I missed out on so many opportunities to get better. But doing that, I thought I was on. I did change. I evolved with the years. I changed my training, and I tried to do the best I could. The one thing I would say that I did that I'm really thankful for is I had a roommate, Pat LaFontaine, who would pay $100 for a massage. Now think about this. Players today, they make enough money that they actually spend their money on their bodies and their nutrition. Um, a lot of players didn't. We'd have one massage therapist on like in our locker room for 25 players. Well, you're only getting a 5-minute rub before a practice. You're not getting an hour, of not only relaxation but actual therapies. I spent money on those types of things for myself, away from everybody else. I didn't tell anybody. That's maybe almost my secret sauce, and maybe that's one reason why I was able to play 19 years. There's a cost of doing business.
Yeah, no, listen, this is really good. I mean, so there's 3 things that I just wrote down, which I think is really incredible. And I'd love to dive into them even further, but I think it applies so much to, like, I'm curious what your take is, in business, because you've spent now time in business post-career, and the new young, either athletes or kids nowadays. Here are the 3 things. Here are the 3 things I wrote down was individual training. Like, everybody has their own skill set. Everybody has their own probably weaknesses. And so having individual training, regiments is important. And then I also wrote best in class training. So making sure that you're getting the best in class training, and then investing in yourself. So, like, those are 3 things to me that are universal, whether you're trying to build a business, whether you're an employee in a business, whether you're an athlete, whether you're a parent. These are things that you can either provide your teams, provide your children, provide to yourself. And I think it's really interesting that you just kind of pointed all those out.
Yeah, I would say it's interesting because I know how hard you train. I mean, just look at you. We've had conversations about your diet and your methodology of building muscle and training. This past week, I heard an interview. Nathan McKinnon, who I referenced a few minutes ago, he's one of the best skaters, hardest working players. Certainly, one of the best players in the game. Nathan McKinnon. He does heavy lifting. He was talking about lifting really, really heavy, putting load on and I assume that's squats. It could be, kettlebell swing, whatever he's doing. I don't know his whole protocol, but he does that before games, and he's getting. I would think if I wouldn't even think to lift weights the day of a game. I would have thought that would have taken away my energy, and I would have been lesser for it, on those game days. Where now these athletes are understanding that they're waking up their nervous system. So he wants the fast twitch muscles. He wants to, be that sprinter and chase down a puck and score a goal. He does that because his muscles and his body is ready for that load. He's awoken that nervous energy or that response. That actually excites me. I wish I was 25 again. I wish I could go back and do that because I would have been a better hockey player. If it works for him, it would have definitely had to work for me. And my view back then, first of all, I had no view. I just did what the guy before me did. And I think that's where sports and business, it gets better and better because you're afraid, or you're not afraid to challenge the status quo. And I would imagine Connor McDavid does the same thing or similar type training. And I would love to train like those guys, go back 30 years when guys weren't training as hard and as smart. Oh my God. I mean, you would have been a prodigy, maybe. Not, like you, or certainly would have been much better than what you were as an individual. So, yeah, I get excited about that. I love watching those movies or documentaries. And I think back to my career, there's a lot of guys that were always trying, pushing the envelope a little bit, doing something different. I myself had my own set of skills. I learned how to fight. I took taekwondo. I took boxing lessons. I did all that. Now I'm playing the game of hockey is different today, but back then it was a real element and it was a real value to a team to have someone that could actually not get embarrassed and not get beat up and actually making a difference with the energy level in a building nightly. And that was a big part of the NHL in the 90s and the early 2000s for sure.
I'm only hallucinating here because I wouldn't know. I've never played professional sports, but my hallucination is that when your line is on the ice, uh, the opposite team is, taking notice, like, oh shit, Mayday's on the ice. Like, we gotta, keep our heads up. We gotta be careful because this guy will run you over. He's strong. He's fast. Um, and you have this will that you're not the guy that's going to lay over. They're not pushing you around.
That's for sure. And the other part, by the way, that doesn't mean I wasn't afraid. And that doesn't mean that I wasn't apprehensive. But when I did it, I knew, and maybe some nights I was inspired by my teammates that were doing that and playing that way. And there's nothing better than seeing one of your teammates do something out of character. For instance, the first line offensively skilled player down the ice and he runs somebody over. He throws like, oh my gosh, for once in a blue moon, he throws a hit. Well, all of a sudden, he does something out of character. Then that inspires the other players to do more. So it became a bunker mentality where, all for one for all. And I think I had wonderful teammates that taught me that I was able to follow them. And then I'm sure as my career, kind of progressed and as I became more of a veteran player and these younger guys that were, young and crazy and excited and, they actually fell in the line and followed what I was trying to accomplish as an older veteran player. So you can't do it alone. That's the cool part. For me, I wouldn't want to have success just by myself. Unless I was a golfer, obviously, but even in that respect, a golfer who's an individual athlete, he has a caddy on his bag. He's got golf coaches, swing coaches. He's got mental coaches. These guys that win majors or tournaments, their first thing when they get to the microphone, for the most part, and if I don't hear it, then I actually look at the player differently. But they thank their teams that they actually work with on a daily basis. They thank and they lean on their families that have been through all the struggles with them. You can't do this stuff alone. And I really think that I'm a team player. And if that's all somebody would ever say about my career of 19 years is he was a good team guy, then I'm very, very happy and confident and proud to say that's who I am.
Yeah, no. So I'm you open the a whole lot of opportunity here for more conversations, and I want to make sure I capture this because, when on a team, you also need a whole bunch of different types of players. Like, you can't have one of the same guy spread across 20 players. And so I'm curious, if you're building a team today, what are some of the things that you're looking for? Whether it's in sport or business, it doesn't matter. What are you looking for? How do you create a team? What are the dynamics? What are the personalities? Call it in the locker room or, in the boardroom type of thing. I'm curious your take on that.
I think if I'm building a team, number one, I need some incredible character that I can build around. So that's a young player that's a champion that came from, humble beginnings possibly and did things that were, out of this world, and I'm thinking of the star players. You need somebody like that who's grounded and has an unbelievable work ethic. Once you have the work ethic at the top, that just bleeds throughout the lineup or your team. So talk about Kobe Bryant, he was the hardest working player. You talk about Michael Jordan, he was in the gym more often than everybody else, and days off he was working and other guys were taking time off. You need those types of leaders. So number one, I got to find it. Two, I need a bunch. I love the idea of leaders, but I need a bunch of followers. I need the second and third guy that's actually going to create the momentum and to keep that momentum going for whatever, the coach or whatever the system is and requires. Like if I have a bowl of soup, if it's too salty, it's too salty. If it doesn't have enough of one ingredient or has too much of another, it's not a nice bowl of soup. And we've all had the best bowl of soup, but we don't know. And sometimes we can never get back to have the same bowl, even when we made it ourselves, because the ingredients are different. And I think that's where pro sports are ever evolving. Currently, during we're doing this podcast, the Toronto Maple Leafs were a really good hockey team last year. They were one game away from a couple games, but one game away from beating the eventual Stanley Cup champions. They may not make the playoffs this year. Chances are they won't. They're 10 points out of a playoff spot. How does that happen in the course of a year when you've only lost they lost a couple players, but one player in particular? Was it that important? Well, clearly there's something that's changed. And maybe it's not just the player, but maybe it's an attitude and a mentality. So I need my guys to have this dogged mentality that are relentless, that are going to get there early, stay later. And the question is, how do you qualify that player? And how you can't give if you can't give them more compensation, as in money, how do you build a culture that brings your employees into, allows them to give more than they ever thought they would for the compensation that they're getting with certain requirements? And for me, it's culture. How do you build that culture? And that really is every general manager and coach is trying to build that type of culture. But I need a couple convicts, guys that are willing to do things that others aren't. I need some religious, real devout, strong-willed individuals that have a belief system that is really, really strong. And I need some dreamers. I need some guys that are willing to do things and think of things that are absolutely impossible. And if you put that right group together, look out. And I think a lot of this has to do, what I'm speaking about is everything outside of the talent that's required. Like, we're all hockey players, or we're all in the computer industry and selling software. But how do we build a culture that's greater than the skill set that we all possess? Because it's about the people and the connection that you have. It's about me doing more, running that 5 miles because I'm afraid of my dad. I'm afraid of him, the way he's going to look at me, not the way he's going to treat me, but I don't ever want to let him down. Mm-hmm. So I'm going to work harder. Like, it's impossible to make the NHL, but I did. And I don't know how, other than I was willing to do more than the next person. And I had this uncanny voice or vision in the back of my head that I don't want to let these people around me down. And I'm going to take on more responsibility. So if it takes me longer to work out, if I have to run further and do an extra couple sets, I'm going to do that. But if you do that every single workout, all of a sudden you're putting in more time to your craft. You're becoming a better athlete, a better person, and certainly more driven and determined.
It's a tough balance between, having a really high, whether standard or expectation, whatever the word that people want to put on it, and then giving people a pass to do less, or an option or an out, if you will, to not show up as their best self. And just hearing you say, like, I had this fear of disappointing, whether it's your dad or other people. I'm curious, based on your experience, what's the difference between the guys who made it to the NHL and didn't make it to the NHL? And were there a lot of guys where you went, man, that guy's had way more talent than I did, but I just outworked them, and then what was the driver for that? And
you know what? I think in so many ways, first of all, there's so many players that didn't make the NHL that were a hell of a lot better than me. And I'm just thinking of my age group at the time. And then, of course, over the course of time, there's a lot of men that didn't realize their opportunity. I think it's not necessarily even outworking the player or that other player. It's just identifying certain moments and maybe getting lucky as well, right? Having success at the right time when the right person's in the building that now has this moment etched in their memory that, oh my God, if I have a chance to get this Brad May guy, I know what he's capable of, whatever. So maybe that kind of, but it's recognizing the opportunity. And I'll give you an example. Playing for the Buffalo Sabres, we're beating the New York Rangers. It's just a regular game, a regular season game. And it was at the end of the second period, and I'd been trying to get in the grill of Mark Messier and Jeff Bukaboom, and I was running Brian Leach in the corner, and I was really robust. And it was a night for me. I wanted people in the building to know that I played. I wanted me to be a difference maker. I want my teammates to look at me and, give me a tap on the back and say, hey, good job. And I got into the locker room at the end of the second period, and Pat LaFontaine, who's a Hall of Famer, and Dale Hawerchuk, who was a Hall of Famer, they both were really irritated and not happy with me. And we're like, if you keep running around, you idiot. Like, do you understand? Like, what you're doing now, you're bringing all of the eyeballs and all of the energy that they have on their bench, and they're coming after us. And that was a real like aha moment for me, is the harder I played, I was thinking I was doing that for my teammates. I was now exposing them because Nick Kyprios and Joey Kosher and Jeff Bukaboom and those players, they're now going extra aggressive after our best players, even though we're winning the game. And they're like, Brad, play the game, settle down, stop being an idiot. And like, we're going to win this game and get through it. Well, we end up winning the game. Third period was awfully quiet. I didn't do anything out of character that I was trying to do. And there was no fights, but that's the whole thing. The threat of the fight is more important than the fight itself, if that makes any sense.
100%.
Inside our locker room, we took care of our own problem. We actually made the game safer, our locker room, without even fighting and encountering the other side. Because of that, I was making it uncomfortable for the guys that I thought the harder I play, I make them comfortable, if that makes sense. The understanding between the best players on my team and myself in that moment, recognizing that, oh my God, I'm a left winger, just be a left winger and do your job in that moment. That's longevity. If I kept running around and if I did something stupid in the third period, which some players that probably better than I was, they maybe did, and all of a sudden they're not actually helping their teammates. They're a detractor. And then the coach sees it. Maybe you lose a game next night and all of a sudden you're sent to the minors and you never get a call back up because you're not a team player. So understanding where you fit, it's forever changing, but understanding that, I guess another part is being true to yourself. Maybe that's luck because other players were better than I was, but somewhere, somehow, they didn't have the trust from the people that were actually evaluating them. So I don't know the answer to that, but understanding and having that emotional intelligence, that understanding or awareness, I think is another skill set that I would be heavily, as a scout or a general manager, I'd be looking heavily in that department because I can find skilled players, but where are the intangibles that are really special in what we're trying to build here? And that's where I'd be looking.
That's really, really, really interesting perspective that probably when I reflect on have not had a lot of time to think about when it comes to business. In that, as you're building your team, communicating. I mean, obviously in business, we communicate to our people like what we need and what we're trying to, what's our outcome, what we're trying to achieve and all that kind of stuff. But having some crystal clear communication and mentorship from senior people on the team to how you need to show up and play, what position are you really playing on the team? And what is your role to support that position is kind of what I heard.
See, yeah, well, you know what? I'm just going to go back to the first story that we talked about with my dad, and I don't want to embarrass him or expose, but what he did was amazing. Is he just identified that no, this ethically, this is where I have to be, and had he actually chased in a team environment, if he had a bunch of other, agents working for him in his brokerage, there's a competition to actually get the sale. and make the most in that sale. But by doing that, unethically, if in fact that happens, maybe you get one sale, Dwayne, but you don't get repeat customers coming back from that same sphere of influence or center of influence. All of a sudden, do it the right way. And you're doing business for the next 15 or 20 years with your whole team that's going to reap the benefits as well. So by getting a win, but foregoing or jeopardizing a long-term relationship is actually not the right way to do it, right? You get more money today, but in a year from now you go bankrupt. Do business the right way, ethically. And if you do it with obviously the care, you have to understand, you have to have that social element to the deal and being able to have it. But if a lot of our salespeople, I'm one of them, we get paid on commission. Even still, I might be able to win one deal, but do I not want to win 20? Like one deal's not gonna change your life. Or in most cases, you want to be in it for the long haul. And I think maybe that's the 19 career in me, where just slow and steady wins the race. Hit singles, the Pete Rose style. Just see the ball, hit the ball. Just get the ball in play, and you have a chance to get to first base. If you swing aggressively, like Cecil Fielder used to do with Toronto, he had the most strikeouts in Major League Baseball one year. Now he had a lot of home runs too, but do you want to be that guy that, like the Toronto Blue Jays went to the World Series? They lost in Game 7. They were incredible at actually just manufacturing runs, energy, offense, by just getting on base, by taking, the fourth ball, whatever it takes, get on base.
Yeah.
But if you swing 3 times and you strike out, you and your teammate behind you doesn't have the same opportunity.
Yeah. No, that's a good point. It's a great point.
I don't know. Like you say, I get rambling a little bit, but I get excited when I start talking about this stuff.
Well, this is like kind of the thing that I think is really cool is a guy like you, you've been on 8 teams, 7 teams, but one Vancouver twice. So eight different teams. You have this cross section, or my hallucination is you have this cross section of being able to have to go into that many teams and then identify, who am I? Where do I belong? How do I fit in? What's the strategy? How do I execute? How do I manage through the ups and downs or the roadblocks inside the locker room or the team, the team culture? So you kind of like kick the door open to that conversation. And I'd love to hear that perspective you have, because you earlier said, like, when you went back to Vancouver, I went, that's one thing you don't see as often in business is, like, I've had people work for me and then they leave for whatever reason and not usually come back. And we've owned a number of different businesses in different industries. And I always think, like, man, like some of the people that I had in one industry would have really flourished in another industry.
Now, interesting that you say that. I have a question for you. Is that because could you have headhunted them a second time? Like, is there any guys or ladies that have got away from you that you're like, that you wish they never left? Because sometimes it's from your perspective, but if they don't know they're being sought after, or they were so valued when they were with you and you missed them, if you haven't told them that, then how do you expect them to ever come back?
Yeah, no, and I think that I was kind of a bit of a revelation for me too, is to, there have been some young people that I've seen go and think, oh man, like, I'm going to be interested in see where they end up, and then you lose touch and, how do you find them again and all that kind of stuff. And so, yeah, probably there are some missed opportunities there. I try not to let people go that, but at the end of the day, I also am a believer that, if they decide to leave, and sometimes we decide that they should leave, I have a belief that, we're all on a path and we're guided, and, what might feel not great, whether it's for them or for us, is there for a reason. And albeit it might not unfold, I also then believe that, people will either come back into your life for a different reason. And so I'm one of those guys that I let the universe play out. I used to be way more aggressive when I was younger. And I think just whether it's a combination of age and maybe, I've skinned my knees so many times and made so many mistakes. For better or for worse, I've probably made more mistakes on average than the normal person. Uh, and as part of it, I just have, believed that, hey, like, the universe is working for us one way or the other. I've always seemed to have landed on my feet, despite of some of my, you know, stupidity. So yeah,
You
it's
know what? So I'm a believer. It's positive energy. Uh, Talk about The Secret. It's a book that came out many years ago. The power of positive thinking, all of that. But the one thing that's always come back is if you don't let someone know or the universe know that you're actually in the game, that maybe I'm looking for a change. Like I was a hockey player and I got into TV doing some, broadcasting for about 10 years after my career. And I still do a little bit. Nobody, I've been around a lot of business people. They did, but none of them knew that I was interested in doing anything different. I was a hockey player. I got into doing speaking, a hockey broadcaster until I actually said, you know what, I'm looking for something different. There's something else out there for me, and I'm not sure what it is. The moment I identified, and it wasn't, I'm in insurance today, but the moment I identified that, there's something out there for me, all of a sudden the door started to open because I spoke it into existence, not even knowing where that journey is going to take me. If I kept my mouth shut and kept all of those thoughts in my head, nobody would have known, nobody would have offered anything, and I wouldn't have changed. And chances are I'd be doing the same thing. And which by the way, I really enjoyed it. But I'm I feel that you have to, when you want something like the I do a lot, or I did a lot of reading, I still do, but um when you get a birthday cake, let's say you're 25 years old and you've got 25 candles on the cake and they're lit. What do you do? What are you supposed to do when, all your friends just saying you happy birthday and you've got the cake in front of you? What are you supposed to do with those candles?
blow out the candles,
Okay. And then what are you supposed to do when you blow the candles out?
eat the cake.
Well, okay, you end up eating the cake, but you're supposed to make a wish,
Oh yeah,
right? When you
right.
blow
Yep.
your birthday candles, you're supposed to make a wish. Now look, here's where it gets funny. What are you supposed to do with that wish? Supposed to keep it to yourself. The whole custom of blowing out candles is keeping that wish to yourself. And I'd venture to guess right now that everybody and anybody listening, very, very, very few of us have had that wish come true that we made on when we blow out our birthday candles, because you kept that wish to yourself. But anybody that actually spoke it into existence and said, "Listen, I want a new car in a year. I want a job and I want a pay raise. I want this, I want that." The ones that actually spoke and out loud and put themselves out there into the ether, those wishes come true, and they come true every single time
Yeah, I
if you're
believe in
willing to
that.
work for them.
I believe in that. Did you do that when you were young as a player?
Uh, what do you like, manifest?
Yeah, like manifesting, like, visualizing, manifesting,
Oh,
putting it out into the ether in terms of what you desired as a player or who you would become or
I if I actually, I wish I kept all these things and moved around too much, but everything that I think everything that's happened to me, every big monumental move, everything that has ever happened to me, I spoke into existence well before it ever happened.
is that right, eh?
And to the point where it's destinational too. I was playing for the Buffalo Sabres. I was drafted in Vancouver. The draft was in Vancouver in 1990. I said to my girlfriend at the time, who's my wife today, um, you know what? We're going to live in Vancouver. When we get married, whatever, we will live in Vancouver. I get traded from the Buffalo Sabres. There's 20, I don't know how many teams were in 1998. It would be 28 teams, I guess, at that time, because there's four more teams in the league. I got traded to the Vancouver Canucks. I lived in the West Coast where I said I was going to, it was actually on one of my goal setting forums. I wanted a cottage in Muskoka. I was fortunate enough to be able to get that. Everything I wrote down on that set of goals, the crazy part was I achieved them in rapid fashion. But all of a sudden, you got to continually. up the ante and keep goal setting and to whatever you want. And maybe I've been a little lazy lately, to be quite honest with you, and I'm going to get after it. Set your goals, achievable goals, and you do that on a regular basis, and you're going to get to where you're going. The definition of success is the realization of a predetermined goal.
Mm-hmm.
So if we set out to, you and I, Dwayne, we're going to play golf next summer. If we say, you know what, you and I together, by the end of July, we're both going to shoot 75. I don't know. Let's pick a number, something that is achievable, but it's not shooting 62 and breaking course records.
Yeah, make mine 95.
Okay. So if you said 95 and I said 75, let's say that. And neither one of us have ever done it before, but we're close. And we set that goal today, guaranteed you and I will actually do that before July if we set our goals achievable. So that success begets the next success. So that for me, setting goals, which by the way, talking about them, my family, we try to do that too. Like, what do we want? What do we want to do as a family? Like, where do we want to go? Where do we want to get to? We do that, but then life gets in the way and it gets busy and you lose focus. And all of a sudden I'm sitting here right now saying, you know what? I'm missing that. That's one element in my life today that I'm missing. I got to sit down and manifest, start journaling again. Cause I think that journaling is really powerful, especially when you write it in your own words.
How much do you think? So you did that did you do that all when you were playing as well?
I did that. I did it like ritual. It was almost my, it was my program. I did it, weekly. Like we play now. You're playing 2 games, 5 games, sometimes whatever. But I would sit weekly and I would say, okay, got to do this. Got to playing or Boston tomorrow. I got to play this way. I'm going to fight this guy. I've got to, I got to get 2 assists. I got to get 12 shots. I've got to get, 22 hits, whatever these numbers are as a hockey player. But I got to do it in my life too. Like it was easy because you could actually follow the metrics and the numbers in hockey. Life's a little bit different. It's got a different pace to it. But because of that, I haven't been as disciplined, and I'm going to change my ways. Today's a good day for me.
Yeah, no, it reminds me of one of my favorite sayings by Warren Buffett is the chains of habit are too light to be felt until they're too heavy to be broken. And what you're saying reminds me of that. It's that those habits that we, that got us to where we got to. And look, what you did in the past to get you where you are won't get you to where you want to be, but there are some rituals that you did that you may, if you're not getting what you want, you need to go back and revisit those. I think you're spot on.
When I was taking supplements, vitamins, of course I'd start to feel good. But then when but now it's your new normal and you're supposed to feel good. And then I wouldn't take supplements anymore. 3 months goes by and I'm like, I'm not feeling so good. Oh, geez, maybe it's because I haven't been taking the supplements, or whatever that is. It's amazing that I do yoga in the summer and I literally start feeling amazing. Like really, really, like flexibility is important. And I the moment I started feeling great, I'm feeling great. So I really don't need yoga anymore because I'm feeling great. So I would not do it. And I've got to get back to like that, just that those habits that you can continue, like not this binge and purge anymore. I don't know if that, like in your world, I really do. Like I end up feeling so good. I stopped doing what was making me feel good. And then 3 months later, I'm like, God, I feel terrible. What is it?
Yeah,
it's happened to me. And it's real cyclical for me because I that's me. I have deadlines. And then once those deadlines are successful or hit, I change. And that's silly. That doesn't make sense.
Yeah. I think sometimes it's, the strongest force in the human psyche is to remain congruent with how we identify ourselves. And so making it part of our identity and really ingraining it into, this is who I am, this is what I do. And then there's this, like, sometimes what I think you're describing and how I refer to it is like a thermometer, a gauge, where it's like, below temperature of 68, oh, it's too cold in here and I got to turn up the heater, I got to do something to warm myself up. And then above the temperature of 73, it's a little bit too warm, and, we got to kind of like cool this thing off a little bit. And it's like, that's what happens in life. And, I've seen this a lot with people in their fitness, fitness, diet, nutrition. But I also see it a lot in careers where people, they do enough just to get, to where their goal is. And then they live in this up and down, which is the threshold of their standard. And, it's pursuant to us to always be pressing the standard of what it is that we want and what it is that we expect from ourselves, so that we can, if you raise your standards for yourself, then you allow yourself to become your best self, and not in competition with anybody else. Just, I'm going to constantly push. I mean, that's kind of
funny.
how
if I was competing against other people, I'm going to win, or I'm going to get there. The hardest guy to actually satisfy or beat is myself.
Well, so how much of that was,
does that make sense?
How much of that would, yeah, no, it totally makes sense. And how much of it do you think is like, what was the one thing that, like, if you had to say, like, the one thing that got me to the NHL? I mean, because there's, at one point you said, yeah, there's some luck, or maybe, sure, there's some luck, but there's 10,000 guys trying to get into the NHL or whatever the number is. And the reality is, in 1 year, 100 guys get in, or 10, or whatever. I don't know what the numbers are, but it's in any sport, NHL, NFL, NBA, whatever. What's the one thing that you think just drove it for you?
If I had one thing on the spot, maybe I have a better example another time, but I always prescribe to, you can't get blood from a rock. And what I mean by that is, we our coaches, every level, but starting in junior hockey, if you're doing well, everybody does well and everybody has fun. Working out and I say getting punished, but getting, we call it bag skated, but that extra skating and conditioning elements, you can't get blood from a rock. So just do it. Like, you can't hurt me. I'm not going anywhere. I'm certainly not going to quit. And you know what? If you're going to make me do this, I'm going to do it, and I'm going to do it in spite of you. You can't get blood from a rock. That's my mentality. So you want to challenge me today in practice? Perfect. Let's go. I'll be the last one standing. You want to challenge me in a fight tomorrow night? Okay. Might be bigger, stronger, tougher than I am, but guess what? I ain't going anywhere. I'm coming. I'm there. So being present, I think that mental fortitude, beyond anything, would be my superpower. That I was afraid. Certainly, I was afraid a lot of nights, but I wasn't going to let those people know that I was afraid, and it doesn't matter, because I'm going to be there, and I'm going to, I'll fight the toughest, and I'll put myself in harm's way for my teammates. And in practice, if you want to bag skate us for an hour, let's go. I'm the first one. I'll be the first one to do it, and I'll be the last one standing.
If I put a bumper sticker on it, and just to frame it for the listener, would I be correct in hallucinating that's like hardening your mental fortitude when you refer to, a rock?
Yeah, like me, like, what are you going to do to me? Like, I'll finish what you're asking, and I'll be here tomorrow. Give me more. Like, you're not gonna make me quit. You want to think you do? Let's go, because I'm gonna outlast you. So what would that bumper sticker be? I'll do whatever it takes. I think I want this that badly that I'm willing to suffer that physical pain and emotional pain, whatever that is. I'm in. So you're not, if what you're trying to do is intimidate me, I'm not going anywhere. And I don't have to be a good hockey player, and I've already beat half the guys.
And do you think that came, the reason why I'm asking this question is because there's a sub question to it, but was that taught to you by a coach, or where did that come from for you?
I would say I say my upbringing. I had an older brother, Daryl, that was better than me and everything. I was the young guy trying to chase him. I surpassed him at some point, I suppose, but athletically, but everything. He was smart. He was great. He was an athlete. He beat me up every day. Sibling rivalry. So just the idea of being that, and I was like that young little pissant that just would never go away. Probably irritating him and his friends or the other elder kids. But I'm not going away. I'm here. Like I'm in this. And I would say that's probably the genesis of it. And then that maybe there's, you look at my father that we've spoken of, but his family growing up in Goodwood, they were farmers, not a hard existence, but grinding farmer, salt of the earth type people. They have to rely on their neighbors, to be successful, feast or famine. I don't know. I think maybe just that. But again, that was the guy that when I say I was afraid of, I just didn't want to let down, was my dad. My mom and dad, but my dad, because he had this stern look on his face, because he's a deep thinker, and he knows, and he could give you one sentence and spoil any excuse that I would ever have, and whatever that would be. He just knew what to say. I don't know. It was inspiring. I love it. I'm so proud and happy to have that. At the time, it was daunting. And when I say, like, I see this new generation of young adults coming, watching sports, they seem, they're talented as all heck, but they may not have the character of those life teachings, because our generation, we're helicopter parents. We helicopter in, we save them from problems. We help them with the relationships. We do their homework for them when they had, homework coming home from school, and just because we want their life to be better. But in some ways, if you allow them to go through hard times, they're better off. I didn't do that. I kind of screwed up. As my kids are awesome, but there's no question I was way too soft at times when I should have been hard like my dad.
Yeah, I'm jumping in that boat with you. There's no question. Like, I was my kids' lives were way easier than my life ever was, by a lot. and I actually I'm not that easy on my kids. But holy shit, pales in comparison to the way I grew up. I get concerned. I see guys like you, like, really strong guys that have dealt with a ton of adversity. And then what are we doing with the younger group coming up?
Yeah. Well, and you know what? There's so many things that we probably don't even see or understand. And they're so capable, and there's going to be so many changes. And you know what? It's this whole like technological wave. It's kind of past me a little bit. I'm trying my best to keep up, but it's amazing. And my kids, they're brilliant when it comes to, all those modalities and things that they use or we use. And I call them and ask for help. I pick on them and I say they're soft, but they're so capable too, to meet whatever their behavior is, to meet the times required. Right.
Well, and that's a really good point too. I'm curious. Sorry, I want to get back to this, because I meant to get on this conversation when you mentioned it earlier, but we talked about a little bit of adversity. It's like, hey, everybody, thanks for tuning in for that conversation. The follow-up will happen next week. We appreciate you guys listening. I hope that it's, my hope that we bring a perspective and shared story that helps you grow and build awareness to the areas of life that you want to improve. That's the mission. And, progress is where we meet happiness. And so keep growing, keep living, keep dreaming. Appreciate you guys listening. Thanks for listening. I appreciate you being with us. If you found value in the show and know a friend or coworker who could benefit from this conversation, please share the link. Remember, each share creates a ripple effect of knowledge and inspiration. And if this podcast has supported you in any way, please support us by clicking the follow or subscribe button.